So, the first thing of these five things of being a president of a country, of an organization, of a family, if you want to put it on that level, the executive leader, to me is a value of life, a value of safety, a value of health and well being. So, when I was in high school, I was class president my 11th grade year, and I had been class president 8th grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. Went on to be the black president at Emory, went on to be the assistant chief of staff at Emory. I had leadership positions over like 10 years. But in my 11th grade year, I'll never forget Dr. Garrett. Dr. Garrett was my principal at Columbia. And she always used to tell me that safety was her goal. Everything I did as class president, Dr. Garrett's meeting with me was always, is that safe, Mr. Greer? That's what she would say. Mr. Greer, come in my office. She had a very deep voice. One year in the school newspaper, I published a story, the best couple in the school. And it ended up causing a fight. And she said, was safety your goal when you did this? When we had the school dances, if we had certain decorations, she would say, hey, people are going to trip all over all this stuff. That's not safe. Everything we did, it didn't matter if we were planting trees for the help the environment. She would always say, Mr. Greer, okay, students are using shovels. Are these shovels safe? How are we going to make this safe? And that was always her thing. So to me, if you're going to be a leader of a hospital, of a church, of a restaurant, of anything, your fundamental bottom line always has to be, is that safe? Um, Everybody has their own religion. Um, I hear that all the time, actually. Recently, I heard that from my uncle, one of my uncles. Everybody has their own religion. And what I mean by that is some people like to say, well, they put God first, or they put this first, or they put that first. We can't do that in a civilization, in a society, a democratic society. Everybody has their own religion. The thing we have to value is safety. No one cares if you're a Catholic and you go hurt somebody, you're going to jail. No one cares if you're a Pentecostal and you steal from somebody, you're going to jail. You get what I'm saying? Your religion is obsolete in terms of how you interact in society. A president is not the leader of a religious organization. Your mayor is not the leader of your local community churches, etc. Safety comes first. Next of my two presidential leadership lessons came from my high school English teacher, and she taught me ninth grade and 11th grade English, and she had a master's from the University of Cambridge, which is really the number one university in the world. Most people would probably make the argument that Cambridge is really the number one university in the world, and some people might say Harvard, but it's so funny with Harvard. Harvard is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's how impactful Cambridge was on Harvard, if you get what I'm saying. But anyway, Cambridge. She went to Cambridge, so this was actually, looking back, this was a super overeducated person to be functioning as my high school English teacher. And she was my homeroom teacher. She was the first teacher I had in high school. And it's amazing to grow up and see how much she's impacted me and be old enough and mature enough to understand, man, this lady was way overqualified to be in that position. She should have been like a senator. At any rate, she taught me the nature of evidence. She's the first person who really introduced me to this topic is, what is evidence? A lot of people say they believe things, but they have no evidence, like a lot of conspiracy theories and things like that, right? So you have different types of evidence. So for instance, you watch the Maury show, they have DNA evidence. The girl is sitting there saying, this is the daddy, that's the daddy, and the man is saying, I'm not the daddy, I'm not the daddy. The grandmama saying, that's, yeah, you the daddy. The other grandma saying, nah, that ain't the daddy. The DNA is the fundamental evidence. Do you get what I'm saying? When what scientists do, what scholars do is collect evidence. Like when a certain disease, like Ebola, when Ebola broke out, right? You have scientists studying it and going, what group of people are most impacted by this? And they're doing studies and they're going door to door and collecting samples from people in neighborhoods and they're, running all these lab tests and they're drawing this data. When I was in the hospital last year, I had all this blood work. I didn't want any more blood work. I had so much blood work. The doctor, he's an African doctor. He came in. He said, "I'm no soothsayer," and I thought that was so funny because I said, "Man, that's exactly what I was thinking before when I declined." I said, "Oh Lord, that doctors hate not to do your blood work because that's kind of the root of their data." And he's not no soothsayer. He needs evidence. So the nature of evidence is so important. I think the worst type of evidence is anecdotal evidence. And I have a lot of family members. I'm not going to name anybody because essentially they're not alone in doing this. I've had students do this. I had people I just meet in the libraries, people I just meet in the grocery store that use anecdotal evidence. But I have family members who do that too, but they really don't understand. Like anecdotal evidence is when you take an experience you had or experience someone close to you had with something and you extrapolate that to an entire population. And that's dangerous. So that's like Donald Trump being president and he's going, well, I had a black man run my city's government housing. I should have Ben Carson, the top neurosurgeon in the world, run my government housing because, hey, every black person I've known in my life, that's called a logical fallacy. That's getting into something else. That's a logical fallacy, but that's also a type of evidence. Logical fallacy is my third point, but that actually functions as both. Anecdotal evidence tends to be logically fallible and anecdotal. That's not real evidence. That's like the weakest type of evidence, if you get what I'm saying. Next, let's go to logical fallacies, which I kind of just hinted at in this presidential leadership toolkit. A logical fallacy is something that makes sense on the surface, but is untrue when you unpack it. So, for instance, when I used to work for Judge Owen at the Etowah County Courthouse, we had an old man. He was the only person that ever beat a traffic ticket that I saw in real life. Traffic court that's the fastest court. People are just in and out. Some people debate their tickets. They usually, 100% of the time they don't win. 99% of people just accept their traffic ticket. There was a very old man that came in and beat his traffic ticket. And the lawyer, the district attorney, used a logical fallacy. She used an appeal to authority argument saying that the police officer had been trained to detect speed. So a lot of times people say, well, he didn't have his radar gun. So the first thing your defense attorney is going to say is, well, how did you collect that sample? They want you to not have that radar gun. So the prosecutor said, well, he was trained in the eye detection, which that's the prosecutor's number one, like, oh, he's trained to look at you until you're speeding. The old man beat the argument by saying that it was foggy that day or he couldn't see. And that's how you kind of see that that's a logical fallacy, because that's really an appeal to the police officer, not really an appeal to that. But that's really called a logical fallacy. And a judge will understand that. And I really don't, I don't want to give you a headache trying to explain it to you. Look up what a logical fallacy is. At any rate, the next thing on my presidential list is disrespect and degradation. Degrading. I read a book called The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, and they used the term denigrate. but degrading, that's the term most people use. Disrespect is like going into your cousin's house or your uncle's house and, going in their refrigerator and drinking everything they have and putting your feet up on their table and, say you go to a cousin you really don't know and you say, hey, I'm going to take a shower. You just go jump in their shower. You really don't even know this cousin. Something like a distant disrespect. Disrespect is like someone speaks to you and says good morning and you just keep walking by them. Degradation is the type of stuff we've been really seeing on CNN. Like people like the perfect neighbor. That was degradation, the way she was interacting with the kids. So, for instance, like one thing I don't like that people say a lot in the hood, like they'll say, Rebecca ain't got a pot to piss in. She got 10 kids. She was always laying on her back. That's kind of fleshy. That's degrading. Mm-hmm. So that's different from just disrespect. So I would like for my presidential toolkit is like to learn the difference between disrespect and degradation. Or another example would be like we have Mexicans flooding across the border with all their kids and food and drugs. That Donald Trump stuff, that's actually degradation. It's fleshy. Flooding, like they don't have individual souls, like they are a thing, devaluing people like they just have food and they're just like animals, right? Hillary Clinton used the term to describe black people as super predators, predator, animal planet. This animal planet logic. Just because humans have to use the bathroom, have to eat, have to take showers, are musty, have bad breath, you know, have earwax, have blood, have, all these different things, animals don't have higher cognition and social skills and the values that humans have and the complexity that humans have. You've never seen a bird build a skyscraper. You've never seen a turtle make the internet. You get what I'm saying? Just because humans have that lower capacity doesn't mean they're the same. So, for instance, on your computer, you can find a little old calculator on your computer. You can see a calendar on your computer. This very old function, a function that's always been on the computer. But an old computer can't get on the internet, a super old computer. A super old computer doesn't have Wi-Fi. You had to plug it in and use dial-up. You couldn't FaceTime on a Nokia, like those old phones, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air cell phone, the big old phone that's big as about two tall boy cans, right? And that's really degradation. So degradation is attacking the lowest part of a human being. So that's why I don't like people who say like Johnny didn't have a pot to piss in, or Becky can't feed herself, or stuff like that. That's called degradation. My fifth and final point, my number 5 on here, and this is simple. I'm just going to wrap it up. I read a book called Argument is War a long time ago, and it separates argument and conversation. So when you go to court, they're making an argument. When you watch CNN, they're making an argument. Argument is where the words are gunshots, essentially, right? That's why they get this term argument is war. It's an attack. It's a punch. When you watch Johnny Cochran debate, they're punching each other with logic and reasoning. Like Barack Obama, when he debated Mitt Romney, he made a comment about the country was Mitt Romney loved the founding fathers, but he didn't like horses and bayonets, which meant that just because you like the founding fathers doesn't mean you like everything they had going on. They also rode horses around. You get what I'm saying? So it's something like that's a punch. So people who study argument love that kind of stuff. But conversation, I would say when you converse with someone, you're on the same team as them. I started to write a book many years ago called Healing the Conversation, which is about like CNN and news and all that stuff. But I didn't write it. I still have it on my computer, pieces of it, but I just gave up on it. I got distracted. But I called it Healing the Conversation because that conversation that we see on the news and watching all these court shows and watching the Maury show and Jerry Springer, all this fight, Real Housewives of Atlanta, football, all that is really kind of symbolic expressions of warfare, subconscious expressions of warfare. And we bring that into our houses, into our city council meetings, into our congressional meetings. And we don't understand the art of conversation. Conversation is two people coming together and they're building a house, like a mason, like people on Freemasons, they're builders. Now when you're building a house, Johnny might take the brick and you're going to take the cement